you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you, Mr. Ranking Member. Mr. Speaker, I rise in strong opposition to H.R. 348, the Responsibly and Professionally Invigorating Development Act, or the RAPID Act. But if I had my druthers, I would change it to the Responsibly and Professionally Invigorating Diversion Act, or RAPID Act. And I would say that it's a diversion because we've got important work to do in this chamber, Mr. Speaker. Everybody knows that we're approaching the end of the fiscal year. It'll be here in 6 short days. And during this whole month of September, we're at September 24th today, we've had a total of 8 legislative days this month, knowing that we're coming up at the end of the fiscal year and we need to pass a spending bill to keep the government open and operating. We've been knowing this. We spent 6 weeks in August, from July to September, total of about 6 weeks at home lounging while the nation's business in Washington, D.C. went undone. And we've spent a total of 8 legislative days out of 24 days in September doing everything other than addressing the looming issue, which is the coming or impending government shutdown. Now, we are here today. We just took one vote. This is the first legislative day of this week. We've got one business day left. First legislative day after hearing from the Pope. We've just had our last vote for the day, our one and only vote for the day. It was to rename a post office, and we're coming up on the government shutdown. And what are we dealing with? Instead of dealing with the nation's finances, we're dealing with this RAPID Act, which, as I said, is a diversion from the real duty that we need to be taking care of today. But H.R. 348, the RAPID Act, is a misguided attempt to sow widespread confusion and delay in the review and permitting process under the National Environmental Policy Act, or NEPA. For over 40 years, the approval process for projects under NEPA has saved time and protected the environment, which the Pope spoke of our need to protect today. In fact, since NEPA was enacted, the U.S. economy has not contracted. It has actually tripled in size from just over $5 trillion to more than $16 trillion. Among other things, NEPA requires agencies to prepare a detailed environmental review for proposals relating to major federal actions significantly affecting the quality of the human environment, end quote. NEPA's purpose is to provide a framework for wide-ranging input from all affected interests when a federal agency conducts an environmental review of a proposed project. H.R. 348, the so-called RAPID Act, upends this review process in 3 ways. First, H.R. 348 carves out a separate environmental review process for construction projects. Currently, NEPA applies to a broad range of federal projects, including hunting permits, land management plans, military base realignment and closure activities, and treaties. In contrast, H.R. 348 only applies to a subset of these federal projects, creating more regulatory complexity in the permitting system, not less. Second, Section C of the RAPID Act allows any project sponsor to prepare an environmental document in lieu of such analysis by the lead agency. It is not difficult to imagine the shortcomings of allowing corporations, which seek to maximize shareholder value, to sit in the driver's seat on environmental policy. In fact, that's why we have such environmental degradation today. During a legislative hearing on 348, Amit Narang, a regulatory policy advocate for Public Citizen, compared Section C to, quote, asking big banks to determine the cost and benefits of new Wall Street reform rules, or big energy companies to determine the cost and benefits of new climate change or air pollution measures. The inherent conflict of interest built into this section reveals the bill's clear design to allow project sponsors to manipulate the NEPA permit approval process to the greatest extent possible. It's clear that not only does this Republican bill task the fox with guarding the henhouse, it would also have him install the chicken wire as well. Finally, under Section I of H.R. 348, if an agency fails to meet the unrealistic deadlines mandated by H.R. 348, the bill would automatically green light a federal construction project, regardless of whether or not the agency has thoroughly reviewed the project's risks. Even if I were to set aside these concerns, it is difficult for me to look past the complete lack of empirical data supporting the premise of the RAPID Act, which is that agency compliance with NEPA is the cause of delays in approving permits. The Nonpartisan Congressional Research Service reported in 2012 that project approval delays based on environmental requirements are not caused by NEPA, but, quote, are more often tied to local, state, and project-specific factors, primarily local state priorities, project funding levels, local opposition to a project, project complexity, or late changes in project scope, end quote. Similarly, Dina Baer, who served as the general counsel for the White House Council on Environmental Quality, which oversees NEPA's implementation for over 20 years under both Republican and Democratic administrations, testified in the 112th Congress that most delays in environmental review process or in this process are not the result of NEPA, but due to other factors entirely unrelated to NEPA. In other words, the RAPID Act does nothing to address the lack of adequate funds allocated to federal construction projects or state-based barriers to the timely completion of construction projects, which are two of the most common delays and have nothing to do with regulatory permits under NEPA. So therefore, I urge my colleagues to oppose this misguided legislation, and I reserve the balance of my time.